Thanks, Pooja. So Charles Darwin wrote in 2 centuries ago, said it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And what he wrote 2 centuries ago actually can be said of the tech industry in 2022. Because COVID has changed the world like never before. It's caused so much turbulence, but it's also created business opportunities like never before. And although the businesses have been preparing for these, ever-changing market trends, and that's what they do, but this 2-year long pandemic, leaders have realized that whatever they've been prepared for or whatever they've been preparing for has completely disappeared. And also at the same time, the pandemic has created this once in a lifetime opportunity to reinvent their businesses from ground up. So how can business leaders take most of this opportunity and do what it takes to build future-ready businesses? This is what we're going to talk about today with Daisy. Daisy, thank you so much for being a part of this session at NISC 2022. So let's dive right in. So to start with, like I said, the pandemic is forcing business leaders to reevaluate their strategies. Could you maybe share some insights on how you think the future has changed for businesses, especially the small and the medium ones?
Firstly, Samir, thank you so much for having me to be here at this in the middle of this very vibrant ecosystem in our country. So thank you for that opportunity. So yeah, absolutely. I think from March, early March of 2020, we've been living in this really fascinating world, right? And we've seen so much innovation and so much boldness being displayed by businesses of all sizes and shapes. And I think particularly the small and medium businesses, because how well they adapted and how well they changed meant all the difference. But it was survival at stake for many small and medium businesses. So it was fantastic to see the degree of innovation and boldness that businesses have exhibited in India, and I think globally as well over the last 2 years. And a few lessons from the pandemic are here to stay. They will outlive the pandemic, that much is certain. And the first, of course, we are at a NASCOM forum, so let's first talk about the technology element. Technology very clearly has moved stages. It was an enabler many years ago. It was always called as an enabler of business. Then we've changed that terminology to say it's an accelerator of business. What COVID has established it as definitely as is the disruptor of business, right? So businesses that learn how to harness the power of technology can clearly disrupt others, and technology has also leveled the playing field between the Davids and the Goliaths, and that's something I think this audience is very familiar with because many of them have used the power of technology to do just that, to step into domains which perhaps the entry barrier would have been very high maybe 5 to 10 years ago. So there is this recognition and there is this acceptance and there is this expectation from consumers that whatever can be delivered digitally must be delivered digitally. And I think that's the first shift and the first change that is here to outlive the pandemic. The other one is that both agility and flexibility are being considered prerequisites to run a successful business, big or small. There is a very big premium being placed on businesses that demonstrate agility and flexibility. And so if that means that one has to adopt a digital delivery model, whether one has to adopt a AI/ML augmented business model, whether that means that one has to create a portfolio of services, of products and services only for the digital world, all of that is going on. So there's a great degree of agility and flexibility powered through technology, but powered through business models, the evolution of business models which is taking place. And I think the last thing, we've always said that trust is the currency of a digital economy, but what the pandemic has also driven, perhaps as an outcome, maybe I'm not sure if it was an intended outcome or an unintended outcome, is that we had lost a lot of trust in spaces, places, people, and therefore it is very important for businesses to use trust as the cornerstone around which they, you pivot your businesses for the new world. And an extension of that trust is purpose. And so for businesses, it's now a moment to redefine. For all businesses, there's a moment to redefine who you are, what you stand for, And what will you mean to all kinds of stakeholders, not just for your employees and your customers, but also what do you mean for what do you stand for, or what do you mean for your community, your country, and the planet? And I think uh, that overarching sense of purpose is also the recipe for long term success and sustainability in the new world. So I'll pause there, Samir. I think those are two or three of the big rocks, as I think it is for all sizes of business, big or small.
No, absolutely. And I think we always talk about COVID being endemic, but I think the challenges are going to be endemic as well. And I think we need to learn to adapt to them. But like we were saying, there are also some opportunities that have come up. Is there any big ones that you see coming, and any ideas on how leaders can harness them?
Yeah, so from an opportunity standpoint, certainly yes. We talk about every disruption also being a tremendous opportunity, and COVID is no different. No, so that's certainly the case. I think one of the things I mean, there are two or three spaces of opportunity which are clearly presenting itself now, and perhaps for the long term as well. So as more businesses have gone online and have gone digital, it's become very important to get customer experience right, Samir. And the more we have gone online, the more we want to be treated as individuals and not as a statistic or a number. So all of the data models that we had around customers, what their preferences were, etc., have been tossed out of the window during the last 2 years. And it's not a steady state even now. It's constantly evolving. So expectations, because during COVID, all businesses rose to meet customer expectations. Now customer expectations are also mutating at a speed at which we have not seen before, right? So there's a whole space in customer experience, in the space of a customer opportunities, in the space of customer experience, all the way from understanding customers, their buying preferences, understanding how to personalize experiences, digital experiences for them. So this whole space of customer experience. And I think Gartner even put out a study saying 2/3 of all businesses will compete on that one competitive advantage of how well they manage their customer experience engines, right? So that's the first one. The second one, I briefly alluded to it in reply to the first question, the business model innovation piece. So, obviously, if we have to meet customers where they are, and if we have to catch them where they are going to, then business model evolution is very key. And again, whether that means that whether it's creating engagement platforms, delivery platforms, whether it's augmenting using technologies to make experiences more intelligent, more human, more personalized, whether it's transitioning portfolios to solve problems that customers are already feeling, or to create needs that customers are not verbalizing at this point in time. So all of that business model innovation is certainly a space. And having built 100 plus unicorns in record time, I don't think we need to uh, stress to this audience that business model innovation is the perhaps the biggest opportunity space. And the third one is the whole, none of this can happen, can happen without people. And while talent right now is a matter of grave headache for all of us, it is also, I think, a great opportunity, because how we empower our teams, how we engage them, how we make them productive, how we make them feel inclusive, how we elevate them to a plane of innovation. That is also a space. Is it's a space for opportunity. Whether so, how we recruit talent, how we engage talent, how we make people more productive, how we make teams more purposeful, and all of that is also a space of opportunity. So I would say there are those big things in my mind in terms of opportunity spaces.
So, talking about business model innovation and customer centricity, I think the next question is probably very relevant. So the priorities are changing for customers, and you said they're mutating at such a fast pace. But what are you seeing with your customers, and what are they focusing on the most?
So I think from our vantage point, Samir, we see customers doing what they probably always do, right? One thing that they used to do before the pandemic, and they'll do now, and they'll do later as well, and all of us do in our businesses, is we're constantly trying to get a competitive edge in what is Friedman's flattening world and flattened even more, while there's a lot of localization and there's all the things from yesterday morning that's going on, the world is flatter than it has ever been thanks to digital. So we are trying to get an edge in a flattening world. But because of COVID, there is also this sense of future proofing for another disruption that will come along, because there is also the recognition that COVID is unlikely to be the last disruption that we have seen in the world. So future proofing our businesses has become a concern. Gaining a competitive edge and staying competitive as a business, as a state, as a country, that's, I think, a constant concern. So I think again here it's clearly, I think digitization is front and center. It's a board level agenda. It is, and the reason people can say why are we always talking about technology? Is it because it's a NASCOM forum? No, is if you just look at what most companies are represented by, right? Most companies today are represented. We live in an app economy. For every brand, their primary app. If you're a bank, it's a mobile banking app. If you're a startup, it's your whatever, your food delivery app or your taxi hailing app or whatever. The app is the brand. So reimagining the app is now almost, making the user experience, reimagining applications and managing user experience is fundamental to success of businesses, big and small. And I think maybe particularly for small businesses who do fewer things but have to do those few things really, really well to stand out. So there is a degree of digitization happening all the way from the edge to the cloud, irrespective of the size of the business you are. There's a reimagination of the experience you will render to your primary customers and markets in the digital world. There is the interesting challenge of trying to converge the digital and physical worlds you have. So really you're building a phygital experience, which is a key differentiator. So companies which were in the physical world are coming into digital and vice versa. So the convergence phenomenon, or what we're calling phygital, is really the world that we're prepping for. And there's a whole host of, and that's what we're calling digitization. And then we have to change people processes. We have to, we have to change business processes and people processes to thrive in this digitized business, right? So those are the types of things that leaders are definitely spending a lot of energy on. They're definitely spending a lot of energy on talent. That's not to, of course, right now, thanks to the war for talent, that's one part of it. But I think from a leadership standpoint, hybrid work is definitely in our future. That is a non-negotiable. People they have arrived, many experiments. We have been a living lab in hybrid work for almost 2 years anywhere in the world in any business. We've broken a lot of myths of what can be done and cannot be done. People have woken up to the reality that they want to recapture some of their personal time, devote it to other things. They need more choice. They need more flexibility, loud and clear in every survey, in every part of the world that you come to. So building a business that will thrive in a hybrid work world is a challenge for most business leaders. So how will you, not just the processes and how will you reimagine real estate, how will you reimagine your comes and benefit, but most importantly, perhaps, how will you reimagine employee engagement, brand affiliation, building loyalty for the brand and the business, etc. in the new world is really front and center. I think that's one other big place they're spending a lot of time. And the last thing is the companies that did really well in the pandemic were who had a very robust, very diverse but inclusive culture, a strong sense of purpose. And so, yes, businesses have pivoted away from just profit to also thinking about the other two P's, which is people and planet. And so there is a redefinition of the purpose of the business and why we exist and what do we do for our people, for our customers who are external stakeholders, but also for our community and the planet, right? So I think these are the three things: digitization, talent, and overall the purpose and the culture of the organization. That I think is where leaders are spending a lot of their time today.
Okay, and we'll double click on the talent piece, but before that, could you maybe elaborate on some critical actions that businesses would need to take to improve their own decision making? When I say businesses, I mean SMEs, the tech industry that our audience is, and how do they get up for future?
So I think this is, all of the decision making is really in response to an external event. That's where decision making is most powerful. And there's a personal anecdote from many years ago when I got hired at Cisco, which was very small in the country. I remember the person who was to be my manager's manager interviewing me, and don't take this any other way, but he said, Daisy, your boss is an overhead and I'm a bigger overhead. And I was a bit shocked, to be honest. But what he meant was that in Cisco, we have a culture of empowerment at the edge. And I understood that only once I joined and once I came in, because we've always believed that the best intelligence is at the periphery of the business. So where the business meets its market or the customers is where the best intelligence resides. And if we can, make all of our decisions flow to the edge, it makes for that's the fastest form of decision making. Now, I'm not saying that you should do away with organizational structures and let chaos reign and let everybody go and do their own thing and make their own decisions. But there is a necessity to organize businesses in a way that is fitter, flatter, and faster. So, all of this intelligence reaches decision and all of this intelligence can reach the decision-making neural networks and wherever they sit, and that can happen at speed. There is a need for agility. Like I touched on agility upfront, and again, an anecdote here. Warren Buffett talks about how the holding company of Berkshire Hathaway has only 60 odd employees, but none of them have designations. And what he means by that is there's ability for people to come together, focus on something, and disband. Now, for small and medium businesses, this is probably the order of the day because people are not defined by their roles. They do many roles in the space of the same day. They do what is required to be done. But small and medium businesses are also at the danger of exponential growth. And when exponential growth happens, it's important to have org structures which have the ability to make all the troops march to the same tune, but at the same time to maintain agility, right? So that's really, so this ability to band and disband at speed is necessary in the way that you create working cultures inside the company. And when not just the people personality to band and disband at speed and that culture to foster that, but also tools and capabilities, resources to help, like I said, empower more and more decision making closer to the edge as much as possible, so that your businesses can react in real time, pretty much. Maybe not as much in real time, but reside at speed. And one good way to do that, Samir, is we've learned a lot of lessons during the pandemic, because even leaders didn't have all the answers, right? So in the pandemic, we were taught a lot of good decision making, how to make good decisions at speed without having a lot of data is what we have learned in the last 2 years. We've developed some, muscle power around that. There are a lot of good lessons to be learned. If some things have worked, how to preserve that in the DNA of organizations, in the decision-making DNA of organizations going forward is something to consider as well. So, yeah, I'll leave it there.
So we've alluded to talent and how important it is, and to empower people so they can take decisions at the edge. But one thing that's been completely disrupted is actually the talent piece that a lot of our SME members are really struggling with. And it's not just the hiring and the attrition that's happening, but also managing talent. And you've also talked about culture here. So what should be a leader's approach for a future ready business towards talent management? And how should it evolve, and what should it look like? What would it look like?
Yeah, I just want to assure everyone that talent, you're not just you, everybody is having a talent problem at this point in time. I think the world is digitizing at scale, and that is creating opportunities for everybody, which is fantastic if you ask me, but it's creating the great resignation, the great reshuffle, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's also an opportunity, Samir. It's also an opportunity because I think what is the great resignation or reshuffle is also an outcome of the fact that work is being reimagined. Hybrid work is well understood. But the other thing is, which we must take cognizance of, is that work is being reimagined in the digital world. phygital world, work is being reimagined. And there are two aspects of it. One is something that technology is doing to work, which is automating all the mundane stuff, right? Whether that is factory line automation, or whether that is AI bots which are standing or sitting alongside human agents to look at customer experience. There's a degree of automation, and so so that's one thing. The second thing is who will do the work is also changing. So as digital becomes an intrinsic part of a business's design, a truck driver is not a delivery agent is a drone operator. A truck driver is somebody who is driving an autonomous vehicle from behind a screen. This is also happening. So who will do building construction? Maybe fire truck, a fire department person can also be somebody who is managing some remote drone from somewhere. So there are all these things that are who will do the work is also changing. So I think it's important for all businesses to think about. So work is being automated. So what part of your talent is likely to get replaced by agents, by drones, by robots who are serving coffee, all these types of things. And also who needs to do that kind of work. uh, I think we have to rethink that also. These are outlandish examples I'm giving, but there may be examples in our own ecosystem of how we reimagine this work. I was talking to 6-7 months into the pandemic, I was talking to the CEO of one of the e-insurance companies in the country, and he said, we were always a digital business, and but we never thought about hiring people from outside the NCR region. I had an office in NCR, and that's where I always hired people from. I always wanted to expand to the south, but I never thought about it. But here comes the pandemic, and anyway, everybody's working from home. And what I thought I couldn't do in the first 5-6 years of my existence as a business, I've done in now 2 months. And now I have a robust business in the south. And thanks to, one of the businesses that benefited during the pandemic was the health insurance industry. And he said, we're doing gangbusters, but it was all between, there's such a there's such a mindset thing going on with the way we rethink talent also. So that's maybe a more practical and pragmatic example. So just that thought process about what kind of talent do you need. And once what's the kind of role, what's the kind of human, what's the kind of talent you need, then you go looking for it. And I think we have to also rethink where we're looking for talent. Samir, at NASCOM, we've been having this conversation for a long time about going to tier 2 and tier 3 cities for talent. And they may not all be perfect, but that's what we have a role and responsibility as an industry to do, to create nurturing environments where we find the next tech workforce for India and for the world. And of course, and the last piece of that talent management thing is, again, this overwhelming, overarching focus on building an inclusive culture, the focus, very empathetic and compassionate leadership style that we all have to build as leaders, and a culture that motivates people to come to work for your business. I think that's very important. And as a part of that, a focus on learning and development, because we may be looking for talent and bringing in talent from spaces and places that we've not brought in talent before. And so if we have to get them purpose fit for our businesses in the digital world, then a learning culture is also, and a development culture is also a very important part of that talent management strategy.
Thank you. And so before we close, Daisy, what do you think is that one ingredient that's an absolute deal breaker for a future ready business? And how do you think the SME leaders who are listening can leverage it or make the best use of it?
Purpose, Samir. I think the world is punishing businesses, even the biggest brands, and I don't want to name anybody, but we are all well informed and looking around. The biggest brands and bellwethers in their spaces are being punished if they are not seen as, and they're being held accountable if they are not being seen as good for their communities, good for their countries or the world, or good for the planet, right? I think I can quote Enron because that was a seminal point in companies not being good for the planet, but or practices. But I think your people practices, your practices about how you are good for the community, the country, and the planet at large, that is becoming a deal breaker. You may be very good at what you do. You may be the number one company in what you do. You may be a world leader, but you are being held, if you are a world leader, you are being held to a higher standard, not to a lower standard.
Thank you so much. And I think that's one thing that most small companies forget about, because, they're more about, how do I earn the money and how do I pay the next wage bill. And so that purpose is so important as they go around building their businesses. And as we said, that this is a perfect opportunity for you to rethink your business, and restructure your businesses. And so thank you for all those insights. I think you've provided so many ideas to feed on and think about as they navigate this crisis. And I'm very sure they'll find it very useful. Thank you so much, Daisy.
Thank you, Samir. My pleasure again.